Whoops. I'm cutting in and out of this tutorial because I'm actually working on client pieces as well. So I have to jump in and out of the recording. I do a lot of the little detailing parts on the um, little coin pieces here just to differentiate from the skin and everything. Any little detail-y things I can drop on them will help. And then I'm putting little like ropes between them to show that they're all intertwined. They're going to have some rust on them, some kind of like mildew. After I have this all finished and have the colors in it and everything, I'm going to do another tutorial that will cover actually rendering it up. So the flat comic colors are going to be on this one, but then we'll actually turn this into a painting. I'll show you how to do that too. Now, when I'm drawing fabric like this, I don't actually use reference or anything. This is all from imagination. I mean, not that it's like some amazing thing and, it looks like I use reference. But if you're wondering that, like, do I use any reference for anything? I don't use reference for any of this. I stick solely to my imagination. I want to get as much of me into these as possible before relying on anything else. And if something is causing a problem for me where like I don't understand something or something's too hard, I'll go and actually study that thing. But I won't reference it to the point where I'm actually just using that thing in my work. Because reference to me can make things feel very stiff, and I don't want to be a slave to the reference where I'm actually looking at the picture and trying to like take exactly what's in that picture and apply it to my piece. I want to figure out why the thing is reacting the way it is in the picture, and then like the folds or whatever on, if I was doing fabric, whatever is in the picture, the folds on the let's say like shirt somebody's wearing or something like that. I don't want to copy that one for one, so I'll look at how it actually works, and then after I find you know, find out for myself how I would apply that, I bring it back into my drawing or painting and use it. But I'll never directly copy something. This style actually differs a lot from my painting style. I usually keep things really loose and vague in my paintings because I like to lose a ton of edges and things. And I don't want to over define anything that isn't the focal. So this is almost like completely counterintuitive to it, but it's really nice to do the opposite of what you do all the time because it's refreshing and it kind of wakes you up a bit to the things that you're not paying attention to when you're doing that style of painting. So even if you're not the kind of artist who uses the style I'm doing right now, I think it's very helpful to um, at least attempt this kind of thing. See if you can do it. I found it pretty challenging, mostly because of how I came up learning how to paint without really drawing a hell of a lot. For me, when I'm doing drawings like this or paintings in Photoshop, I don't really like to take any sort of shortcuts or use anything. I mean, like, it's as straightforward as I can get it. This is, like when I was in ninth grade or something like that, or eighth grade, basically when I was like 14, 15, 16, I would draw occasionally, and I would like to do like finished line drawings, so I would use a light box. And that's pretty much all I'm doing here is turning the opacity down on these pictures so that I can get that light box feel. But I don't use like the pencil tool, and I'll go in and actually like brush in everything. I know people say like, oh, use the pencil tool because then you can do the quick fills and stuff for the color. But I like doing it this way. I think it's better. I just want to get it as close to how I used to do it as possible. I actually stopped even using like actions and stuff in Photoshop. I find that anything that kind of stands in your way of using a shortcut forces you to like almost be more efficient when you're doing it so that like you don't want to have to like go through the process of like going through the menus and things, which is like the highest form of laziness to actually think that that's a problem. That's my theory anyway. Don't forget to save. That's what I forget. Flip the canvas on this. I haven't looked at it flipped yet. So there are a couple things I think are weird about it now that I've flipped it. One is that the eye isn't as creepy as it was. So I'm going to change that. Also, I forgot that that was the gums and not the lips. So I gotta fix that too. I was trying to figure out why that looked a little weird. See, but that's like the important part of flipping the canvas is that you notice these little things that you might have not have caught if you hadn't because you're just so used to looking at it. And I'll run into that over and over and over as I go through a piece. So always make sure that you're doing that, getting a fresh take on it so you don't have to backtrack too much if you did mess up. The colors I'm thinking of going with are like a brownish, bluish, just kind of like a sick color, dull, pale, wet, dead fish kind of look with some other hues in there, like some lighter blues and darker blues, and kind of like drift over into the green area too. That's what I'm thinking. And then there's going to be the gold, and then probably a really dull yellowy color for the drape. So as you get away from the focal area, like the face, when you're doing lines, it's okay to get a little looser in the same way that you wouldn't over render parts of a painting that weren't the focus because that draws too much attention to them. So you want the most detail, the most lines and everything in contrast to be in the part that you're trying to get people to look at. So I don't want to go in and do too much on the rest of the picture. It'll still be final lines, but it won't be as polished as this main area. And you have to draw the hands well. If you don't draw hands well on a character, then that's instantly like an awkward thing, and you want to avoid bad hands if you can. Just, like I said, study them, reference your own hands, do a couple drawings of them in the position you want, and then go back into your drawing and try and do it from your imagination. Anytime you can apply a study instead of just directly copy something, you're going to be taking in information because you're actually doing the action. It's more effective that way. This kind of looks like a Rick James BogWitch. Not intentional. So I have one line width I'm going for on the actual character because I'm going for an animated look, so I'm using really thin lines. If I were going for a comic book look, I would go in and do some thicker lines and create more depth that way. But on this one, the way I'm going to separate this character from the background so all the lines aren't the same is I use one size on this character. So this is the brush is 7. That's the size of it. I mean, like, it's not like that's my default number 7, but I'll choose whatever I'm using for my lines on the focus. On the background, I'll go a couple sizes smaller so that the details aren't as intense. So like, if you can see that line's a little smaller. And then I'll go a little bigger on parts that need to be focal points. I've been really hesitant to do a tutorial because a lot of times I see a tutorial and I see it go up and people are following along, and it's almost like you're working to basically like be that person who's doing the tutorial. But obviously that's not the case. What it should do is provide you with the tools to hopefully be, you know, able to find yourself, like this is just one option and it's more like a road. It's pointing you in a direction so that like you can actually use that information and apply it to your own style or whatever else, or because for me, I've been hesitant on doing tutorials for a while because I don't feel like they address a lot of times the right issues that people have with art. Like I have a common kind of complaint with tutorials in general is they're more about like exactly how to do what somebody else already does and not about how to get to a place where you can do that kind of thing. And no tutorial is going to take you through the years it takes to study and to learn everything. And it's, most of the things that you're taught, the little glittery things that are applied afterwards, they're kind of useless unless you have all the initial information necessary in your head to apply it, because 99% of this is just some learned thing that you do from studying, like in practice. So these tutorials are mostly helpful usually to professionals because the professionals can take on a different technique from another artist or compare how they do something to an artist who does something similar and try and figure out if there's a better way to do what they're already doing, like things like that. But for beginners, it's always this thing of like, well, I saw you do this thing in the video, could you explain that? And pretty much all of that comes from experience, like those weird things where you're like, but why did you make that decision? Why did you do that? These are educated decisions that come from years of training. And it's one of those things that nobody really wants to hear, but it's not like you're going to buy something and get a magic pill from it. Like it's all about somebody's process, and that's unique to that person, and you want to look at it for what it is. It's that person's thing, and then go off on your own and try and mimic what they did if you want, but in your own way. Like, don't go and do exactly what the person does. It's strange to be that way because, like, a lot of the innovations that come through in art come from trying to figure out how somebody did something. So, like, you're not doing it one for one. You didn't get exactly the same set of brushes or the same exact, step by step. This is the tools, this is the filters, this is everything. Like, you want to come from it seeing what they do and going like, I wonder how to do that, and then try to discover it. And in that, you might not nail exactly what they do, but you're going to find a different way to approach it. Like for me, I'll give you an example. I was watching Marco Derjovic do his drawings, and he does them in Photoshop, and he has this really cool pencil brush, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I've never seen a brush that looks so natural. And I came home from his studio and I was trying to figure it out for myself. Like, I really want to try and, get into doing line work because I was really inspired by what he was doing. And I basically opened up Photoshop and started going through my brushes and like making brushes bigger and smaller and seeing what looked like graphite and what didn't, or what looked like ink and what didn't. And then I eventually found this one that was pretty close to what I was looking for, and I went with it. It wasn't Marco's brush, it was something else. And it didn't look like Marco's brush. It looked like an inking brush or something like that. And in that way, I'm not doing exactly what he did, I'm doing something else. And even more so in like technique and things, you have this weird tutorial kind of culture that's been around for a little while, since like conceptart.org and all that, where people just want to take what they've learned and from the tutorial and just do exactly that. But you have people like Brad Rigney who came up using a smudge tool, and it's only a smart thing to do after you've seen how good he is at it. But if you had watched him when he first started, you would have said, you're not supposed to use a smudge tool to paint with. Nobody does that. You're supposed to do this and this because I've seen it in these tutorials. You know what I mean? So it's nice to be able to like differentiate and say like, yeah, like that's a tutorial, but that's not the be all end all perfect way to do it. It's nice to leave that window open for discovery. Like, it's not wrong to go and do something that isn't the way the tutorial taught. It's actually better, and I think you'll find it benefits you more to basically like follow whatever you're looking at tutorial, but do it your own way. Like, see how somebody approaches something and try an approach that you can grasp right now instead of doing exactly what they did. Like, a different way to arrive at the same place will make you, I mean, will put you on a path closer to being you, having your own style and all that. The infamous have your own style talk. The nostril's a little weird there. Rotating the canvas here so I can get a better look at the hand and get it looking a little bit more accurate. Drawing it at a weird angle is it's not like an impossible thing, but I like to just make sure I'm getting a accurate hand here since it's so important. I mean, it's pretty much just as you would on paper, just rotate the page. It's nice to have those kind of natural features in Photoshop. I'll add rings like that kind of thing and then just erase the line out. It's simple enough. And then to add some more definition to some of these lines like I have, like if you notice I like outline parts of the head and things. I just go over the lines one more time in the places that I want to have that kind of dark edge to them. And everywhere that has a dark edge is something that's kind of facing away from the light. So in the same way that, like, let me turn it back this way so you can get a good look at it. If light were hitting like here, then there would be shadow over here, and underneath the chin, all that. So I basically treat the light source as hitting like in the center here, and then anything facing away from that has a harder line on the outer edge because that's where a shadow would fall. It's a way to define the light source with the line weight. Knuckles a little big there. The line is a little too defined there. I'll do a little bit lighter line. The splotches on her skin is just little mildewy parts, and it adds a little bit of texture to her so that it isn't super boring. In just like the bare arm parts, I want there to be some interest there. The fat of her hand needs to be here. It felt a little weird. Rotate the canvas again. Get some fresh eyes on it. drawing wrinkles around where the thigh comes up so that you can see it's descending again. We're doing the wrapping the forms away from the light there, from us, from where we're looking. So as I move down the picture, I'm actually getting a little uh, less strict with my lines. I don't need to zoom in so much. I keep them a little looser. You know, the focus is at the top, so I don't need to over detail this stuff too much. I'm just going to do some simple lines here. Make sure I'm wrapping the form well, and then move on to the rest. The one time I'll zoom in and do more detail is if there's things like the coins again, if they repeat in the design. Also with the coins over here, some of them are a little too detailed. Some of the dark areas look a little too messy, so I'm going to go in and just quickly erase those. They're drawing too much attention to themselves. It's too much of a contrast from the rest. They actually work better without any detail on them. So it's nice to zoom out and realize that and quickly go in there and change it. Yeah, that's better. A quicker solution for the rest of it might be to just go in and change the color of the lines on the coins themselves, which I can do because this layer that I'm on right now doesn't have any white on it, so I could just attach a layer like I did earlier to this one and then just change some of the line colors. I'll show you that as I move ahead with this picture. By the way, if you start doing line work and your line work sucks, that means you should probably keep doing it. Working at being a good draftsman is super important with what we do. Being able to structure everything right and know what you're actually painting. If all you do is paint, know what it is that you're actually working on. Have an understanding of the forms in line as well as just the shapes and whatever you're going through when you're painting. All of the little details define the form well. So like if the circle on her skin is like this, it's going to be like this on this side because this is underneath, it's wrapping. So when I'm placing these things around, it's not just for nothing, it's to help define the forms. And no, that's not a vagina. That is fabric. That'd be the worst thing ever if I did that. I realized that putting the coins on after I draw the rope is more appropriate because I can just erase out the rope from inside of the coins and not have to draw a little strand between each one. It's totally okay. It's like one of those things where you can't be afraid to fuck up. You have to learn from everything you do. You find little efficient ways to keep moving forward. Just know that you won't do it again and keep going. It's actually awesome to fail all the time. You should always suck at what you're doing, I feel like, because unless it's for a client. If it's for a client, stick to what you know to some degree. But don't be afraid to push yourself and have it not work out. It's a huge part of growing into this. There's a strange thing that goes on, and I've talked about this a million times, but it's that thing of people who say, like, I don't want to start, I suck at that, oh, I suck at this, I suck at, whatever. Everybody sucks at everything they're not good at, Everybody who just starts up doing something, it's going to be shit at first. You just have to be willing to deal with it, get through all of the crap, and come through the other side. It's like eventually you're going to be good at that thing because you're working at it. Just keep working at everything, and you'll get to your destination. You want to be a certain kind of artist, have a certain style, and just keep working at it. You're going to find those things. It's a natural progression. Just stay invested. Don't give up. There's so much time when you're working on this stuff. Like the middle of studies and everything, where you don't even understand, like, if you're progressing, like you can't even see anything. Like you're like, I can't tell if I'm even learning anything from this. But you are, and you have to stay consistent, and eventually, you'll end up doing what you want. Because for me, I didn't even know how to start a study. I had no idea. I was just winging it, trying to figure it out, and I did it live. I did my first kind of like digital study. Like, honestly, I think this was one of my very first was an online digital study that I did on live stream, and it was just a chat room full of people telling me that I don't know what I'm doing. And it's funny because, like, everybody wants to tell you that you don't know what you're doing, that this sucks, that sucks, whatever. But that's good, you're not supposed to be great at what you're doing, and that's confirmation when people are like that. It's like it's confirmation that you're on the right path. Okay, maybe I'm not great at this, but if I keep working at it, I will be. And that's really all it is. You're going to be great at that thing if you keep on pushing it and trying and working harder than everybody else. Forgot to draw that arm. My study schedule when I first started doing everything was so ridiculous. I used to just, I mean, I'm sure there are people who've done crazier things, but I used to wake up every day. I started the Crimson Daggers thing so that I'd have an excuse to get up and work. And if you don't know what that is, it was a live stream thing, kind of like a free online class, sort of. It turned into that like over time, but at first it was just a reason for me to wake up every day and do a study, just to have a group of people there expecting something of me. It's kind of like when you tell people, how people say, like, tell everybody that you're going to quit smoking because they'll hold you accountable to it, or tell everybody you're going on a diet because they're going to be aware of it and they'll know when you're fucking up, just so that you make sure that you're actually doing it. So I had that set up, except it was the studies, because I was like, I'm not going to do this on my own. And I used to wake up every morning at 9, do 2 hours of studies, and then I would work constantly all day until I went to bed. And I did that every single day for like 2 years or something. I'm not sure. but it was a long time. And then we restarted it, and it was something else. It was more of like the competitive stuff and the judged awards. The studies were more of like a community thing, and then we started the forums and all that. But my whole period of studying was over the course of a few years, and I still study all the time. It's just nothing but applied studies, which is what we used to teach. Um, and I'm talking about this now for everybody who's watching this who maybe got this download because they thought that this would be the end all of like how to do exactly what I'm doing right now. But what I'm telling you is what I did to get to this point. You can follow what I'm doing, and hopefully you learn enough to expand upon this and use it in your own work. But yeah, like how I got to the place I'm at right now with painting and clients and all this is because I literally just woke up and studied every day. So anything I sucked at, I would spend a week doing it. So just draw hands for a week, draw feet for a week, draw anatomy general for a week, but on top of that, do photo painting, do life painting. The one question I got all the time was, how did you learn how to do your lighting? And it's funny because you want to like say some sophisticated answer like there's this actual process to doing it where if you do this, you're definitely going to learn it, and you need to buy this, and the other thing, or read this book, or follow these instructions. Like, it's strange the kind of like official answer I feel like some people want, but the reality of it is that all I ever did was sit down at my desk, and I had like a regular, just shitty old desk lamp, and I would set it up with like a t-shirt for fabric, and then maybe a fruit that was just hanging out. I'd let fruit rot actually, and do like different variations of like fruit decay. But I would have like a fruit and a metal spoon, something made of glass, whatever, and I'd put the light on it, and I would just study that for a couple hours, and I would do that live, and that's how I learned all of my lighting. Literally, that's all I did. I would sit there and I would focus on one center point in the um, still life I was working on. Like, for instance, um, let's say we're looking at a piece of glass, right? And there's a part that's very reflective, like the light's hitting it. So the example I used to use is like, imagine yourself in a dark room, and all of a sudden somebody turns on a light. You look right to the light first. So that's like, you're attracted to that contrast, like your eye automatically looks there. So your eye is automatically going to look at the part that's getting hit with the light. So all I would do was focus on that, and then in the same way that if you hold your hand up to your face and concentrate on it, and then look in your peripherals, and you'll see that like everything is kind of out of focus and blurry. Like, don't move your eyes from your hand, just keep focused on it, and then look around. Just glance to the side, and you'll see that everything's kind of blurry. And that's how I would do the studies, is I would focus on the thing I was painting that had the highlight or whatever was the strong contrast, the thing that you would naturally look at if you were in the room. And then I would render out from there, so things would lose edges and lose focus as it went away from that point. And that was it. So I would go for value, like trying to get the shadow right and trying to look into the shadow and get the real colors in there. Because a lot of times, if with cameras, you can't look into shadow and actually get a real color there. It's a lot, your eye is a lot better than that. So doing the studies from life are much more beneficial as far as seeing accurate color and light. But I just did that every day, and over time I learned how to do it, and how to paint. So that's it. That's literally all I did. Nothing special, nothing secret. you know, it's super simple. I didn't really have any resources. I eventually bought a bust of a guy's head, which was just something on Amazon. You can look those up. They're pretty cheap. But yeah, that was my study regimen. Was a painting from life, some anatomy, and that was it. I did that every day, and then over time, it just built up. But honestly, those get to. I feel like the studies get to a point where you kind of develop, and I've talked about this. I think I already talked about this in the tutorial in some part of the breakdown or something. But you can't really mention it enough about like the study sickness, where you kind of get into this habit of thinking in terms of everything's right, everything's wrong. Like you think in terms of like you can't break rules because that's the way life is. Life doesn't look like this. That's an accurate painting. The lighting's right in this one, and that's wrong. But I mean, like if you look at this character I'm working on now, like all the anatomy is fucked up, and it's not like accurate, but it's more like cartoonish and exaggerated, and it's more fun to me. That's not wrong. It's just different. So, it's nice to do all the studies, work really hard, get all that down, but then make sure that you break away and still have fun drawing and painting exactly the way you want. Not that that's wrong to want to paint and draw realistic, but I just know that some people who get into it, myself included, you think one way and you think it's the only way because everybody in the industry does it, but in reality, there's so much you can do. It's a shame to limit yourself to one thing and one set of thinking, and that only a super polished painting is good. What is considered good, because for me, having come up doing that stuff, a polished painting is actually easier for me than doing line art, because I kind of know how to hide stuff in a polished painting, and I think most people do. You can get away with a lot, and you can't really hide anything with a line drawing. And usually, if you take a design and you do a line drawing of it, you start to see what's messed up about it, or what's broken about it, or what's boring about it. It's a nice exercise for me now to do this, to see what I suck at, see what I can't draw, and everything that I can't draw, I have to address. So I'll draw more of it. I'm going to double check this now and see if there's anything else I'm missing here. And then I'm going to move into doing the background lines. So I think for the most part, I'm good. I don't know what's left. I don't think there's anything left really. So that's the finished witch lines, I think. Yeah, it looks fine to me. And now I'm going to move into doing the background and the water and all that. And then we'll jump into colors, and that'll be it until I follow up on the next video. But yeah, let's move into doing the background lines now. Okay, so on to the background. As I was saying earlier, the brush I used for the Swamp Witch was a 7, size 7 right here. So I'm going to reduce it a little bit so that I can draw in that background without the lines conflicting and matching. So I'm doing this lighter line here, which is just going to follow the tree branch. And I can stay looser with the background lines because she's so detailed. I don't need to go crazy with it. It actually does a disservice to her if I do too much to them, because they'll distract from the drawing. So this is kind of the cylinder thing that I was talking about, with the forms, except this one's just, you know, pretty much exactly that. As you can see, it's kind of wrapping there. But what I'm going to do as I put lines on here to give it some dimension, I'm going to wrap them around the form as if this were like a tube. So if I think of this like a tube here to here, and then this will be like the middle that's facing us, I'm going to go like this. You know what I mean? And that way I can draw the lines coming in and out of it. So I'll turn the opacity down on that, but leave it there so you can see it. So you see these lines here. And this is basically what I'm going to do. So everywhere it kind of bulges out like this, I'm going to bring these lines in. I'll show you what I mean, like this, to define those forms. And I would do this painting too, but that's what all I'm thinking about when I'm doing these lines is that cylinder form, and how can I give it that depth? How can I wrap these lines around to make it look like it's receding this way and this way? So I'm going to shut that off and work those up so you can check it out. The ones that are facing us, I can do flatter shapes like this that don't have any like wrapping look to them. I've always wanted to do a character like this. I mean, it's obviously like tons of, like I've mentioned earlier, tons of influence from Legend. The character Meg in the swamp. I was like, when I was a kid and I saw that, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I always hear like that people talk about how like they're copying things and how like you shouldn't do this or that looks like that artist or this or that or whatever, and it's like none of that matters, none of that, like nobody cares. You know, that's pandering to the group. Like we know those things, a lot of artists know those references, but the general public, they don't. And I'm not saying like steal things from anybody, but I'm saying that if you love something, don't be afraid to take on influence from other things and bring it into your work. Those are the things that you like, and I'm sure that whatever you end up adding to the piece, along with the fact that it's referencing something else, it's going to be you. Like it might look like a character from something. I don't know how many times I've seen the Akira jacket, but like who doesn't love the Akira jacket, Kaneda's jacket, the red one with the buckles and stuff. Like I've seen that loads of times, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's so much worry about being another person or copying somebody or just like not being an individual, and nobody's an individual. I mean, if there's somebody that you see and you go, wow, that's really cool, they do some really unique style, it's not a unique thing though. Like it never is. It's funny, everybody talks about how like there's only a few like new people out there, and it's like they're only new because they don't, they come from a place and they don't necessarily like the same things that you like, so they're coming from this other world. Like maybe they like came up in animation or something. Maybe they have influence from certain Japanese artists or whoever else, like somebody you've never heard of. Those are just, less obvious references, I guess, but they're not solely unique. They're not, coming out of nowhere, thin air. These are things that are developed in people as they take in the world around them. Everybody's influenced by everything. But that being said, it's like you should open yourself up to being influenced, like expose yourself to more things. the more kind of information you take in and the more things you watch and artists you get into or different fields you start to like dabble in or whatever, you're going to take on all these different influences from people that you know otherwise would be ignored in your immediate industry because they're not common. I really hope you guys listening to music and you listen to this because of all the silence. By the way, on the branch I'm doing here, as I was saying, like the form's wrapping and all that, but what I'm going to do after this is add little details to it, and they'll be on a separate layer. The mossy stuff that I had hanging down, like the swamp, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess like it's almost like seaweed or something. It's just rot. I want it to be hanging from the trees. It'll still be hanging from the trees, but I'm going to erase the parts that it hangs on. I mean, like I'm going to erase the tree where it's coming down, but I want to get the tree totally done because I'm not sure what parts it'll come through on. And if the tree lines are too strong and they're melding too much with the witch, I'm going to go in and actually like define the back a little bit more of her so that she stands out from the tree. Sorry if this video was a massive file. I wanted to get everything out I could because I don't have a ton of time to make tutorials, but I figured if everybody else is doing them, I at least want to like get my word in. I had resisted doing these like for so long, but it's funny seeing the. I mean, I know that tutorial can last forever, so this bit of information might just be part of a little fad that's going on. But the Gumroad thing that's going on, the tutorial, um, I mean, the site everybody's using to host their tutorials, it's actually pretty similar to this idea I had a long time ago about how everybody should offer tutorials for like $5, and I was going to do it, but I couldn't find a hosting site. And it's cool that it exists now, like that this is actually a thing. I've wanted this like for a while, and it took me like realizing that to be like, oh yeah, that is a cool idea. I think my natural instinct is to not go along with the thing that's happening. Like it sounds really lame, like trying to be rebellious or something super immature, but um, I just wanted to do what I thought would be right. But I was like, hey, if everybody's doing it, I at least want to be able to talk about the things I think are important working in this industry and everything else. I know I'm all over the place with the tutorials. Hopefully you can watch the introduction that covers the basics and just if you need to just revert to that and be like, okay, that's how he does it. Because otherwise the information's spread pretty thin throughout this. But I still wanted you to have the option to watch me actually work through a whole picture. Granted, I'm slower because I'm talking, but it's still pretty accurate. I think one of these usually takes me, I mean, I don't go this detailed for client work, like if I'm doing compositions or something for a job. I don't go and go crazy like this with tiny lines and everything. I'm much looser and I let the colors and everything else kind of define it for me. But I want to do something that I feel good about on here and can call like a finished thing. And of course, I'm not going to leave this as only a line drawing. I want to show you guys all of my approaches I have a few of them to doing work, so I'm going to do my how I paint from a line drawing with color, and then I'm going to do how I would paint this if I were to actually like make it feel like a painting where I lose edges and everything else. Because this one, the other style I have is more of like a kind of, and it's not realistic. It's just I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's kind of like its own thing. I did it for some of my Starvale work. If you look at my gallery, I have a piece called Aurora. It's a girl, and I had I had painted her in that style, and I think that one worked out pretty well. It was the first time I had tried it where I actually used the color of the lines as like the only dark color in the whole picture, like the only kind of shadow. So I don't really ever dip into black or anything like that. So I'll do that with this one, and then I'll also do my grayscale approach and maybe my straight color approach. I think the tree back there is going to be kind of like a gray color when I'm done with this. I like to kind of imagine where I'm going as I'm rendering, and I mean as I'm drawing the lines, because you get so much time. Like a lot of my painting process, it's so fast to like jump into values, like dark to light, and start like rendering out shapes and things, and you can jump into a picture so fast that you lose the planning aspects that you kind of have when you're doing a line drawing. Because a line drawing can take some time, and because you're investing so much time, you want to like figure out exactly how you're going to execute this thing. At least I do. I know that it makes me kind of like appreciate the process a bit more so that I'm not hasty when it comes to making decisions about color and composition. If I'm going to spend this much time on something, I want to make sure that it works and that I'm happy with it. I used to just do paintings just to paint, and it really served no purpose. And then I realized that I ended up coming out with all of these images that like they didn't have anything to them. Like nobody cared about them. They were just another one of those paintings that you'd see online of somebody's face or something like that. And I was like, wow, I could do these forever, but you know, nobody outside of the art group cares about it, because it's like I was rendering them and the lighting would be okay, and that's all it was though. It's like, but if I showed like a kid that, like if I showed like a 10-year-old kid what I did, he'd be like, what the hell is that? It's boring. You know what I mean? Like people in our group appreciate the technique and everything, but technique is really nothing compared to an idea. So when you like invest a lot of time into something, it's like you want to make sure that the idea is good too and that it works. You don't want to just like have this, you know, rough image that really serves no purpose and nobody really cares about. But that being said, I don't think that all of my drawings everybody should care about. I just noticed it when I was doing my comic stuff that I was like, wow, I put so much thought into this and I get so much more out of it, and it's like a whole product. It's so much more satisfying than just doing a painting. So I was like, I should just do that with everything I do. Like actually make sure there's something behind it. It's not just this one shot thing. Like why spend all of this time doing this work when it doesn't serve any other purpose besides just, you know, existing? I think that's why a lot of artists do like collections, because it feels like it's part of this whole complete thing. And you can say like, oh, I completed my collection. And you look back on it and you're like, oh, this is cool. Like it's all one thing. It had served a purpose. I completed it. It's not just a one-off. So it feels bigger. But I started doing that with all my styles. So I gave each one of my styles a product. So like the Black Witch is for my black and white to color style, and then my line art style goes to Starveil, and then my fully painted color style goes to Skull and Shark. So it's like I'm not just drawing to draw, and I'm not just painting to paint. I have a reason for everything I'm doing, and everything outside of that is simply client work. And I'll occasionally do the fan art thing, but that's just to make sure that my name's still out there, because you never know. That stuff can be featured on blogs or lead to better jobs. So it's nice to put those feelers out there. So that's the tree. I just wrapped that one up, and I'm going to move on to the lower part of the image and then start coloring this thing, which is going to be super relieving. Alright, now on to the moss and the grass on the bottom. So I have the character on a layer here, and I have the tree on another layer, and now I'm going to create one more layer, and this one will serve for the grass. And all I'm going to do is draw on top of like the lines I already had there, and then I'm going to, underneath this layer, create another layer and fill it in white where the grass overlaps the feet and stuff, so that I can go in there and actually see the grass. I'm going to draw like a rock in here and stuff. And I just really like that old Warhammer stuff, the little figurines, and I know they're still around, but I used to love looking at those, so I like to do these kind of like set in the earth looking designs. So I'm drawing like moss on the rocks down here, and then I'll draw the rocks underneath there, but yeah, just trying to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to kind of bring it down a little bit so that it hugs the side. I don't want to do this straight across line here of moss. And break that up a bit so it feels a little more natural. It feels weird when things are just like angular in nature like that. They're supposed to be a little, I mean not angular, but just like conforming to like a really simple shape, when everything's supposed to feel organic and kind of like twisty and moving around, and yeah. So I'm just creating like layers here so that it recedes back that way. So like one, two, three, like foreground, middle ground, background, and they can overlap a bit or whatever. This is the rocks here, so these would be a bit more angular, more shapes, simpler shapes, and then the moss can hug it. So I want to get back on the topic of style and why it matters to follow the thing that you love doing. I just want to give you an example because I feel like I didn't really say my side of it enough. What happened to me doing this style is I put it up online. I started doing Starveil, and Starveil, like this is an evolution of that style. Like I wasn't really doing tight line drawings. I was doing more like brushwork. But I started doing the Starveil stuff, and from the immediate community, I didn't get any really like good response. I got like kind of a mixed thing. Like like, and I don't mean I didn't get a response that was good in general. Like, that's just kind of overreacting. Like, just compared to what it used to be. If I do a painting and I put it online and it gets whatever big response, if it's something like a monster freaking out, flexing or something like that. So it's kind of like easy to gauge what's going to be more popular and going to get more hits and everything. But I started getting into doing the Starvale stuff. I put it online, didn't get any real response. I started doing the comic book, and that didn't get any real response. And people literally were sending me messages saying like, "What is this shit? Like, how come you're not doing, your painted stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, I am doing my painted stuff. I just can't show you. It's client work." So I was just doing that for fun, the Starvale thing, and then I was like, I really want to get into doing comics and learn how to do it, and it'll help me progress Skull and Shark. So anyway, I keep working on it, and I get into the story a bit, and I start fleshing it out. I introduce animation to the book. It's on my Tumblr, or if you can just go to starvale.com and look at it if you haven't seen it. But I started doing that, and I was learning a lot and just like having fun and just not caring. But it ended up leading to a comic deal, so Starvale's actually being picked up. Uh, I can't talk about who picked it up yet because I haven't signed everything yet, and the official release isn't there yet, but it will be a comic book, so it's going to be coming out in print. And that Starville work also led to me working on X-Men Days of Future Past, as well as I'm working on multiple movies now, also for Fox, and it's just like so much stuff came of that style, and nobody in our industry really like cared that much for it. Like the massive amount of people didn't care for it. Certain people care for it, but the amount of opportunities it led to is crazy. And I'm only saying this not to like toot my own horn, but to say that if you have something that you don't do but you want to do, that you are like afraid nobody's gonna like, or you actually you're affected by the community because the community is one way and you're another. Don't worry about it. Like, do that thing. It's gonna stand out because you're in a group of people that only does one sort of rendered look. And if you are the odd one out doing the opposite, then you're gonna draw more attention to yourself. So I know for me it helped so much. I love doing this work now, and it's just another thing, another style I can use. It's something I can improve at. I enjoy doing it. And it doesn't matter if other people like it. It doesn't matter if it's popular even. Like, just keep doing the thing that you do. Because it took me, I did about 27 pages of the Starvale comic book before anything even happened, like before anybody even really like cared to look at it. So it's just, nobody's, necessarily going to respond to your dream right away, but it can lead to something really great, because if it's something you really enjoy, then that's going to resonate with people, and they're going to be able to tell that you're into what you're doing, and maybe there's something there. Maybe you can do something with it. And also, if you do have a style that's different, apply it to a market. So I would just use this as an example. If you have a style that you like, but you're like, oh, I don't know, nobody's going to hire me to do this. Why not like redesign the Ninja Turtles from the new Ninja Turtle movie? Because that's been a big controversy. Things like that will just like change everything for you. Like that could potentially be the thing that leads you to 100 jobs. I mean, that happened to me, and yeah, I can't recommend just like being yourself enough. Like anything you want to do, just try it. I mean, we're artists after all. Like, be creative. It's just like a funny thing that you're supposed to be that way. Like it's kind of that was the expected thing, was to be so creative and now we're in a place in this industry where everybody's kind of doing similar stuff, and not that that wasn't the case always in like history, but it's just funny how it is now, where it's supposed to be the most creative field, it's supposed to be the idea driven field, and most of us are asked to just draw hot girls straddling swords. You know, you're going to be the one that basically like dictates where you stay as far as all these jobs are concerned. Like, if you don't like doing these things, then, you know, if you have to do them, like, do them, but also do what you want to do on the side. You know, the time it takes for you to change your life with some sort of, you know, project you have in mind, it's all up to you. Like, nobody's going to give you the perfect opportunity to start doing the thing you want. You have to decide that you're going to do it. And, you know, who gives a shit if people like it at first? Just keep working at it. And, you know, show people why they should like the thing that you do. And maybe it leads to something really cool. Maybe it doesn't. But at least you gave it a shot, and hopefully you learned enough from that thing to bring it over into, you know, whatever else you're working on. Hopefully I haven't repeated myself too many times on this, but I've been doing the tutorial for a few hours, so it might be kind of like inevitable. I'm going to do the swamp fog now. I'll probably keep this kind of like transparent. I don't want it to stand out too much. I want it to fall into the background a little bit. I don't want it to kind of like ooze off of the water like that.